right, welcome to the Bryce Eddy Show. So today my guest is my boss in the Jiu-Jitsu world, Master Carlos Machado, a very good friend of mine and one of my favorite people on this earth. And we're going to talk a little philosophy today. Welcome, Master Carlos. How are you, sir?
Bryce Eddy, my brother. I can't wait to go visit you in Idaho. I know you and I were reminiscing a little bit about meet and greets and quality time, and you have your cigar lounge. Man, I'm here like scratching my fingers here. We got to talk about that at one point in time. I can't wait to see your lounge.
Yeah, we gotta get you out here for sure. I look forward to that. I look forward to spending that time with you. You know, both of us are so busy, and I'm realizing more and more, just recently, how much that downtime and those rest periods and those periods of fellowship are important. You know, I've been running so hard for the last few years. It's it takes its toll after a little while. And you and I, before we started the recording, we're talking a little bit about that, philosophy of jiu-jitsu and how that is one of those things that really applies to life. And I talk to people, and I know, you do over all the years, about how it can make you better. And I think at the core of it, it's because it is something that, has you really push through adversity. And life is a struggle. There's a book called The Road Less Traveled, and it starts with the one line: life is difficult.
Mhm.
And in order to push through, you need tools. And there are things that give you tools, and jiu-jitsu is one of those. So I know you wanted to talk a little bit of philosophy, and we're going to hit a couple of news stories, but I'm happy to have you on and happy to just see where this episode goes.
Thank you, Bryce. Yeah, that's true. One of the hardest things for me in jiu-jitsu is the constant battle against your own ego. You know what I'm saying? And in the beginning, it's normal for us to kind of take that stance where you base your performance on being with the upper hand against whoever you go against. And if you tap the guy and you don't get tapped, that means you're doing well. Or if you can stay, in a dominant position for a longer period of time, you walk out of the mat, yes, feeling like, I did good. And sometimes, sooner than later, we all realize that you cannot hold that in perpetuity, you know. And the thing about jujitsu that I feel that compared to life is, it's like a hammer. You either hammering or you're getting hammered. And when I say that, is not in a in a mean way, but it is, you're not going to always have the upper hand, and the other thing that parallels, there are a lot of times as a practitioner and then as an instructor, how can I create a parallel that anytime I spend on the mat, because jiu-jitsu is about trouble solving, 100%, and you're always there trying to deal, how can I make this easier? How can I spend less energy and get more results? And adopting that kind of mindset, it's easier said than done, because a lot of times we have the string attached of our ego. We attach our sense of well-being based upon how well we perform at a given day. And I remember back in the old days when I was a kid, I always had butterfly in my stomach before a session, because I know there were at least two kids in my class that would give me a very difficult match every time we grappled. And bear with me, I was on the top of my class with those two kids, but I had such a competitive, and I think there's nothing wrong about being competitive, but as you mature, you realize it's about growth, and sometimes you have to willingly put yourself in a bad spot so you can figure out how to get out of there, and that applied in anything in life. You anticipate the problems
Yeah,
before they become a major issue.
so Dennis Prager talks about a thing that I thought's fascinating with children. And Carol Dweck, who wrote a book called Mindset, talks about a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. And by the way, that's the book that Tony Robbins, when asked, what book do you give out most often? And it was that book, Mindset by Carol Dweck. And in that, it talks about the idea that if you are good at things naturally as a child, and your parents praise how, oh, look at your straight A's, you're so smart, you're so intelligent, you're so good at these things. When you actually come to real adversity and you fail, you can end up creating in that kid or that person or yourself this, oh, I don't ever want to fail. I don't ever want to face adversity. So I'm not going to try that. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go there. Versus if you as a parent are praising more of a growth mindset, you're praising the work and the effort and the skills that are being developed, but not, not necessarily the outcome. And what happens is you get a person who then understands that, hey, like in jujitsu, I'm going to get my butt kicked if I start it for 6 months to a year. And actually, for the rest of your life, there's going to be those people. You talked about the butterflies in your stomach. I mean, that's probably one of the biggest things when I'm talking to people on embarking upon the road of learning to fight or learning jujitsu or learning something like that. The overcoming their fear of stepping on the mat is the number one thing, because that is an uncomfortable thing, especially for someone who has been maybe successful in all the areas in their life. You talked about ego. That's kind of what that is. They can't face the battle of, wow, I'm really terrible at this. My former CrossFit coach, which was a many time regional competitor, so he was really at the top echelon of the CrossFit game, said that to me the first time he tried jujitsu. He quit because he trained under me for a little bit. He quit
Hmm.
because he couldn't face being that bad at something. And then now he's since come back around and he's been training consistently, and he kind of overcame that. But a lot of people have that struggle in life. They have a fixed mindset, so being bad temporarily at something is too defeating for them.
Hmm.
And I want to encourage everybody, if you have kids, make sure you're praising their effort and their hard work and their stick-to-itiveness and their ability to persevere, not just the like their natural intelligence or things like that.
Yeah, well, I think I can give you an example, a couple of examples that reflect what you're saying. One in regards to how important it is to deal with adversity at an early age. Uh, the monarchs from the past, there was a writer way back, mystic, Lobsang Rampa. He wrote a book called The Third Eye. And in that, a portion of that book, when I was reading, talks about the monarchs at that time. It's very common that they would send their children to the monasteries to be instructed by the monks, and they would learn about wisdom and life lessons. It was like there was a spiritual background, whatever their belief was, but also they would do the menial jobs. They would clean the bathrooms, they would sweep the floor, and these are kids that were literally the king's son, the future heir of the throne, and they were already. And I see a lot of friends of mine; they're very well to do. Their kids in summer, they go work at grocery stores. They put back, they handle, grocery bags to customers. They do menial jobs. It's not about. I think here the perspective is like for me. I mean, I can do whatever. I still clean my academy. If I'm there and some job needs to be done, this past Sunday I was cleaning the academy with my wife. Put some music. It's not that we have to do it, but we are not objecting doing it if there's a need for it. We're
Yeah.
not too good not to do it. I think the poem "If" from Rudyard Kipling, that talks the passage of if you can walk upright in the midst of the noble and gentle amongst the Gentile, that's one of the parts that you're the same person no matter what situation you find yourself in. Whether you're in the White House with the president or discussing with a janitor in a campus. You see what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So, but the thing with when you look at like a movie like David Carradine's TV show Kung Fu. You remember back in the old days when the young monk, was being trained and had to, get that burn tattoo on his skin and go through all the kind of different things. I think it's not hardship trying to willingly gain suffering or attract suffering to you. It's about gaining strength anytime you are in a difficult moment. It's a
Yes.
muscle. And I think we spoil our kids nowadays. Our civilization has such a degree of comfort that the poorest person we know in America lives way above the means of any kings from monarchies from the past.
Yeah.
And we lose perspective over it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Nobody
we
has
do. I
learned.
was talking
Yeah.
with a friend about like, what era would you want to live in? And we have sort of fantasies about what certain times were, and oh, look at
Oh,
that. And the point was in the exercise that you could live in any era you want with all the wealth and everything that you need. And I said that it would have been maybe the 50s, 60s, 70s, which were in many respects kind of the height of America in terms of our prosperity, but we still had running water and toilets and things like that, because what we don't understand is how rough even the kings of old had it compared to us. Our everyday luxuries have made us so soft, we rarely ever get to experience real discomfort. I love the jujitsu philosophy of becoming comfortable with the uncomfortable, because we
mhm.
don't have much of that in life now, and our kids are spoiled. You talk about that. They don't have to labor almost at all as children anymore. And by that, I mean, when I grew up, and maybe your experience was the same, we did a lot of chores around the house. We were homework, and school was not our job. Our job consisted of, contributing to the household and everything that we had to do. And then we also had schooling and everything else on top of it. And I think families today have forgotten the importance of just teaching that kind of grind and work ethic.
Yeah, I mean, resilience. That's really what you want to pass to our children today. Resilience, being accustomed not to quit easily, not to give up when things go more difficult, and that leads to competence. If they can go through that first stage in which they're getting familiar with the discipline, and then at one point they're going to be exposed to adversity when they start going and doing the roles and things like that. And it's interesting because especially in children, you see a lot of times the problem is not the kid. The kid is actually a victim of the parents' projection on them. So you see a kid that just wants to learn and grow, and he's there for the taking in terms of absorbing the knowledge that used to be passed on them. And then you have a parent on the corner trying to coach on the sideline, yell at them, or mistreat them if they feel the kid didn't do their best. So every session is like the final of the world championships. I've seen so many parents that they relate to their kids like that. And so we have rules that said, hey, if you open your mouth, you're out. And a lot of schools actually they have those one-way glass windows that the parents stay outside the mat area. The kids cannot see the parents. The parents can watch them, but they cannot interact with them. And some schools go that far as they can drop their kids, but they are not allowed even to get in. They
Oh,
can watch the
interesting.
class from an app on their cell phone with the cameras in the school. But in some instances, I know that instructors go that far because the kids are under such a pressure for whatever reason, and I understand it's a chain reaction. Probably the parents had issues with their parents that the
Sure.
grandparents caused issues with. And I'm not saying all the blame is on the parents, but definitely the home environment plays out a major role on how some of these kids cope with
Yeah, well,
life.
you were talking about philosophy, and that's how, wanted to take this episode, but that philosophy of that, how we're teaching things, how we're raising our kids, what we're wanting to do in our lives, what we're trying to build, into our lives for our growth and all of that, comes from our philosophies. And I'm not sure that our society is having much of those conversations. We were also talking a little bit about how much the modern day push is for us to be divided. And I talk about that a lot on my show. If we, as a society, largely Christian society, all get together and start to openly talk about philosophy and the good things that we can be doing along those lines, it's pretty hard for them to steal from us. It's pretty hard for us to be ignorant of what our politicians and things like that are doing if we aren't divided. And it's that push has been so dramatic, and of course, we're seeing it every day. We're seeing it right now in real time with Charlie Kirk's death and the fallout from that. I mean, they want us to be divided, and they're a little terrified that Charlie's death has brought a lot of people together right now, and it's really an interesting time for us to live.
Well, there are a couple of things here that you mentioned that I feel we should refer to. Like, I'm almost look at things. If you go to the primal structure of society, family unit is the foundation. And so in the social engineering that we have been seeing being implemented in society gradually, for instance, when one income was not enough to keep the household, and then both parents had to go to work. So they already limit the amount of time, and then you have daycares, and then of course the school system with the expanded hours. My kids are all homeschooled for that reason, not because at that time I do believe homeschool is the best approach to education, in my opinion, for
Mine too.
children. But for us was how to keep our family unit stronger because me being an instructor in martial arts and the busy schedule that I have, my hours are odd. I go to work when everybody's leaving work, so I wouldn't be around my kids at night for the dinner time or for storytelling because I was at the academy teaching, and then they will go to bed by the time I go home, and in the morning before I woke up they already gone to school. And then and the school, if you look at the schedule, it's an extended amount of time. It's not what it used to be 4 hours. A lot of times they have extracurricular activities. So kids stay in school from like 7 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon.
Yeah,
That's literally, and but with
super
that
common.
said, so you have that social engineering that the parents don't spend enough time with their kids as it is, because by the time everybody's back home, everybody's wiped out from the day. You don't sit down for a meal. Kids are ready to do their homework and then take a shower and go to bed. And the parents, maybe they want to chill a little bit, wind down, and then next day comes, the same routine starts. So that's one part. I think too, technology, whenever devices, the screen, cell phones, tablets, computers came to play, whatever amount of time we actually are able to harness to spend together has been diminished or affected or compromised by the fact that we are distracted, browsing on YouTube or TikTok or everything, So I do my best with my kids to make sure that at least when we have a meal together, that we talk more and spend less time using the cell phone. And needless to say, when you talk about division, I think there's a couple of things. First, you influence the kids with indoctrination because there's quite a few subjects, and I'm not here trying to be political. A lot of stuff that you learn in school that should have no merit
Correct.
in the school curriculum. And when you look at our educational structure, it's the Prussian school, which was devised in I guess the late 1800s to early 1900s, where uh, they want to the soldiers to be more compliant, to obey, and go to war, whatever wars at that time they were being disputed, without rebelling. So it was kind of like designed for the military to indoctrinate, their troops, or the youth, to serve their purposes, and then eventually it was passed on to society at large. So let's make sure we build workers, compliant workers, citizens who don't question authority. So there's a whole thing going on, and I think too, it diminishes creativity, it limits debate and discussion, and then
Yep.
now we talk about division. The parents don't have an input. The kid is at the mercy of the school system, and then as they grow older, whatever issues currently we're talking about, it's easier to manipulate somebody who doesn't have the influence from a strong family unit. And I
Well,
think
and
that's
if
the
you're
core.
yeah,
Yeah.
and if you're teaching them not to think, right, which is the more modern teaching philosophy, right? It's teaching them to memorize, it's teaching them facts, quote unquote, because a lot of things that they're teaching are just simply not true, or perspectives that are perverted. But if you aren't teaching them to examine, if you aren't teaching them how to learn themselves, if you aren't teaching curiosity, if you aren't teaching questioning things and all of the stuff in the more Socratic method or more classical learning style, then yeah, you're creating automatons that can be just downloaded whatever philosophy the culture wants them to have. And that's why we've had the state grow so large and the individual grow so small. And Dennis Prager, who I love and admire, said it all the time, that the bigger the government, the smaller the citizen. And that's the world that we're inhabiting now. And it was all very much intentional, going back to that Prussian school philosophy and everything else. And it's countercultural, and thankfully it was on the rise, and COVID exposed it. But it's countercultural to have your kids be homeschooled in the fashion that you did and I did.
Yeah. Well, if you look here in Austin, Texas, and I know Elon Musk created a school himself with a personalized curriculum. Uh, but there's a school, I'll get the name in a second if we can pull that. But there's a school that the classroom is outdoors mostly, and it's not based on subjects, it's based on projects. You know what I'm saying? So whatever subject you need, if you need mechanical engineering, you're building a tractor, or you're building a vehicle or an equipment, or if you're planting a garden and you're gonna harvest, whatever it is. It is so amazing because the kids, their motivation is so much higher, because not only they are dealing with problem solving and learning how to use tools, they see the fulfillment of their project as the class evolves.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And that for me, it's just amazing. Now there is also another classroom that is, and I know we can debate on that. Is using artificial intelligence, in which the students are self-assigned, the curriculum specified to their strengths and vocation, and whatever they want to work further, they're pushed towards that direction. It gives them all the elements and the fundaments, but the AI kind of guide the kid, and the kid can kind of go back and forth and give the prompts and expand whatever scope of the subject they want to go to research. So and like I said, there's always a debate on that part,
Yeah, I mean, and
but
let's talk about for a moment. I mean, I think AI is an amazing tool.
yeah,
But like any tool, that's dangerous, right? A shovel, a gun, AI, whatever, a car. It can be used for great promise or great evil. And you're analyzing right now, and some of the college students who are grabbing AI to essentially do some of their assignments and things like that. they can't retain it, right? And that's been proven. They cannot retain what they've learned. They cannot cite what they put in their papers. They haven't really learned the material. But like I've been enjoying experimenting with AI to figure out expansive prompts. If I'm curious about something, you can go through AI and actually use it as a genuine tool of learning. Going back and forth with AI, designing AI bots that will help you get things done. I mean, I think all of that, like anything, it can be, used or misused. And I'm excited about the world that we're living in, but I share even Elon Musk's concern or others about just the dangers of having Skynet.
Yeah. Well, the Terminator scenario already exists. If you look at the battlefield nowadays, drones
Oh yeah,
are robots. They're killing machines. They're
yeah.
robots. So
It's actually
nowadays,
terrifying if you think about
yeah,
it.
so that is already there, right? I think here when you're talking about using AI in a way that serves you and serves a higher purpose. I do kind of like the same thing that you do sometimes on prompts, trying to kind of build up the prompts to see how far I can go. But also when I'm reading, when I'm listening to an audiobook, for instance, Disrupting Time, is a book that was on the top 10 a while back, and it talks about how the Swiss watch industry stole uh, the watch technology from the United States.
Hmm.
And then basically they sent spies. All the Philippe Patek, Rolex, all those. They were the original ones, and they stole the technology that the U.S. had at the time. The U.S. had the Industrial Revolution, had the machines, could produce a lot of watches, but then eventually the Swiss kind of got it and was able. And I was listening to some of the passages of the book, and then I'll go to chat and say, elaborate more about this area in Switzerland, how it is it geographically or culturally, or give me the era. Talk about the trade show that they came along and they stole the technology that was being displayed by the American companies. And so they kind of chat would give me the overview from a background perspective. And then I'll go back to the book. And literally, it's so much more enriching because you're
Mhm.
not just seeing the surface of what the author is saying, you're seeing the background as well with the addition of AI to
That's a great
interact with one another.
Yeah,
You know,
that's a great example.
yeah. So, but anyhow, yeah, any technology has a dual use. In the end, humans are the ones that will apply it for the good or not.
Yeah, I've been really working, I got into a bad habit, in the mornings, I mean, how much I have going on and, how many things I'm working on at once. And, you sometimes feel like you are, you're never done. You're never caught up. Things are hitting you and you're fielding. But I started my day just, popping right into Twitter or, social media or emails, like, right away. The first thing I was grabbing was my screen. And I've been really disciplining myself to get back into what I used to do. Grabbing a book, with my cup of coffee, spending maybe after I wake up doing that, doing my God calling devotional or reading a book I'm interested in, going through my other devotionals. Um, I've been working on that for a little bit now, and preparing your day that way versus launching right into screens and technology. Your day is so much more rich. You're approaching it from a much better perspective, spending a little bit of time, organizing your priorities for the day again. And these are disciplines that I used to have that the technology of the day has encroached upon. And I think so many of us have allowed the technologies and the addictive things like social media encroach upon our lives. Instead of using them as tools, we've been, addictively and mindlessly just, being consumers of this stuff. And I feel a big transformation, just going back in the, kind of old disciplines and old direction.
Yeah, I guess what we're talking here is about what's tangible, right? What
Hmm.
can you touch? Virtual, the virtual, you see it, but you can't touch, you can't smell, you can't taste. There's and I believe that no matter what we talk about in technology, especially AI, you never replace human touch. You never. You can have a robot, that emulates. And I know it's another scenario here that I saw a real in China. They have this series of, because that the vast majority is a male population.
Hmm.
With the one child policy, and the parents most of the time they want to favor males over females. There was a lot of infanticide against the female babies. Uh, so they are in a situation they don't have a wife. The Chinese, I mean, there are literally a population crisis that way. Not just their growth is negative, but also they don't have enough matches for the male
Right.
population. And it's kind of like an apocalyptic thing because it showed this literally model-looking robots. They look pretty, and they're supposed to be household, utility robot, and maybe a household, whatever other destiny you want to give it to it. So it was like, whoa. And this is something that, oh my gosh, this is really happening. They're considering that. I think here what you're talking about when you spend time in the morning not caught up with social media, I call those seizing moments, and there's nothing that can beat that. Seizing moments. I reflect a lot when I go to LA. I spend some time with my brother Hegan. He lives there, I live here. When we see each other, it's for sporadic amount of time. And then I'm going back to Dallas. He's going to stay in LA. And so we have our cup of coffee or we have our meal. We try to make the most of it. But we know that once I'm done with my coffee, once we're finished with our meal, we hug each other. He's going to stay. But I do feel those continuous nuggets of moments. That's what really makes life worth. And and the thing with social media, I think what's sad is it kind of diverts us and distracts us from our real purpose. We're here to learn. Whether you're learning from a book, whether you're learning from talking to someone who's sharing a story, whether you are learning from yourself when you're listening to your surrounding and being introspective, thinking about your life. And these are the things that I feel. And I can just give an example here. One of my favorite things to do nowadays, I kid you not, coffee and newspapers. I
Mm.
was trying to remember which city. I think I was, where was I, man? Maybe in Tennessee, not long ago. And in the hotel that I was, they had a newspaper. And guess which newspaper they had? It was not the Wall Street Journal. It was not CNN or any of those. It was Epoch Times.
Oh yeah.
And they do such a good job of covering in depth current trends, current events, unbiased, right? So I was like,
Or at least from a biased position that we know, right?
yeah, yeah,
The left started pretending, and the major corporate media started pretending that they had no bias at all, and they were just giving us and dispensing truth.
yeah,
The Epoch Times has a uh, editorial philosophy
yeah.
which leans conservative, and they are enemies of the Chinese Communist Party, and
Mhm.
openly so. And they're more of a free market orientation, but we know that, and they're
Yeah.
not hiding it, and so
Mhm.
it ends up being far more honest instead of manipulative. But yeah, I like it. I've done interviews with them, and been on a couple of shows that they
Yeah.
sponsor. It's great.
But the whole point of that, Bryce, was there's something magic about reading a paper,
Yeah.
and I was really listen, their articles were extensive. It was not like just a headline with a few paragraphs. They were really covering a lot of stuff. So I was sipping my coffee. I was eating it up. I even took a cup of they had two different I guess issues. I took both of my backpack And as I was going through the airport on my way back, I was still digesting the information. I love it. I call that the coffee and newspaper. That right there beats any social media browsing.
Yeah, and boy, you know, I mean, I know that the times that we live in, you know, are interesting, exciting. I'm glad that we're living in these times, and you know, our eyes are open to what's happening, and we know that. I mean, I think it's faith affirming and strengthening to know the troubled times that we're in. Um, I just lost your camera there, but
Can you hear me?
yeah, I got you.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
there was
lost.
a little disrupting call.
Yeah, no worries. But I saw an old movie, and by old I mean like the 1980s. So pre all of the technology that's kind of plagued us, like the smartphones and some of that. And back when you could truly go on a vacation, and other than maybe an emergency telephone message at the hotel, you were largely off the grid. And I left my phone in the room not too long ago and decided, okay, forget it. I'm going to totally unplug, and needed to. I think I was at a personal breaking point at that moment. And did take a newspaper and sit and sip and read. And it is that tangible thing of feeling the paper itself, really is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, well, being close to nature, it brings you back to reality. You know what I'm saying? We're so distracted with the lights, with the devices, with all the influences of ideas that some are so superficial and non-relevant, and it kind of like we don't spend enough time digging what really matters, what really can make a difference. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
and I feel if you use jiu-jitsu as an example, make every minute on the mat count. I saw a young man a while back, very talented jiu-jitsu guy, and everybody has their method, how they propel their training forward, how they improve. And this guy said, my role is based on growth. If I'm rolling and I feel I stumble with a situation that I feel I need to perfect, he stops the rolling right away and start troubleshooting and working on whatever the issue is, and then he goes back and rolls again. You know what I'm saying? He's kind of like he does not let it pass the opportunity to handle whatever's coming at him at the time he comes. You
Hmm.
know what I'm saying? So imagine us uh, transferring that mindset to our day to day. Hey, it's not working. How can I make it work better? Because the whole thing is like not to make perfect. That's the other thing. We have this idea of perfection. Man, Jesus is perfect. I'm not perfect. You see what I'm saying? I want to
Yeah.
live like him. I'm not aiming to be him because that's a goal that's far beyond me. You know what I'm saying? So it's really very interesting. And he actually does more positional training than he does rolling. But he does roll. The roll is to test.
Hmm.
The growth is digging, you know. So make every minute count. And that's the thing. In the span of the day, how much do you make every minute count? And it doesn't have to be obsessive. If you're doing nothing but you are with yourself, that counts. Those moments of solitude. I'm a believer you need solitude for fortitude.
Mm.
You know what I'm
I
saying?
like that. I'm gonna write
Yeah.
that down.
Solitude doesn't mean loneliness, being lonely. Yeah.
I
You
like
know,
that.
you're talking about your vacation being off the grid by keeping your phone in the room. I almost feel like, man, we should have a pager that we give to the people next to kin or our closest friends and people that, if they need to reach us right away, they page us. And we know if that thing buzzes, okay, I need to
Yeah,
answer.
John Lovell, Warrior Poet Society, who's a friend and a guy that I admire tremendously, and he has two phones, and he's got his business phone, right?
Yeah.
And that's the phone that he carries during the workday, and when he is available. And then he's got his phone that only his parents and his immediate family have. and and that number is not available to anyone else.
Mhm.
And that is, I think, another great way of looking at it. It's pretty inexpensive to get a secondary cheap phone, and it doesn't even need to be a smartphone. It can just
Yep.
be, something that you have on you that is only for, those closest to
Yep.
you that, need to communicate with you, maybe even in an emergency, and you can,
Yep.
kind of relegate it to that.
Yeah, I thought of that. I thought of that. I know you can do the do not disturb on your own phone. You have some, I guess,
And
ways
I've been
that you
doing
can.
that more. I've been
Yeah.
doing that a lot more. And I
Yeah.
encourage people to do that. That's like that first level of that is just, putting it on a do not disturb, or you can customize your do not disturb function so only certain things come through, and just, quiet down that noise. And I'm like kind of in real time right now because I realized I've reached a, breaking point. I've, got five or six battles simultaneously going at once in my life, and some of
Yeah.
them are good, some of them are not so good. And I'm a resilient guy, able to handle a lot of stress. I know you are too. But sometimes when you're, being hit from, every angle, it's. I mean, if we want to liken it to jujitsu, you've got those people. I remember, your brother John Jock is like this, where he's sometimes machine gunning submissions at people,
Mhm.
and it's one trap after another, and it becomes overwhelming.
Mhm.
But the more you are facing those sort of things, the more resilient you do get. But sometimes you just need out.
Yeah. Well, you remind me a couple of things here when we mentioned about the do not disturb on the phone that you're using more of that. And I know, he's kind of like Brass in Unconventional, Dan Pena. You may have heard of him. His is the multimillionaire that has a castle in Scotland, and he
Oh,
does
sure.
the business retreat for 30K for the week, and he makes you box somebody and get punched in the face and
Oh, yeah, and he
cusses
does a
at
lot
you
of
from.
yelling and screaming at
Yeah, he
people.
cusses at you beginning to end, tells you as it is, try to straighten you out. and and then one of the things that he said when I used to hear some of his YouTube clips was that there are three type of contacts on your phone list. And when we talk about making the time count, making every minute count, I think for relationships, it's even more critical.
Yeah.
What kind of time you're giving to a particular type of relationship. So he divides his cell phone contact list in three categories. The ones that are not only not aligned with his goals, but undermining his goals. Those he cuts, he deletes. And then you have those who are uh, not aligned with your goals, but not doing anything against them. He blocks them. And then you have the last category, those who are aligned with your goals and are contributing to your goals. Those are the ones that he keeps active.
Mhm.
You see what I'm saying? And I think a lot of times the problem with us is like it's not that you have to purge your circle, but that thing happens spontaneously.
Mhm.
At a point in time in your life, you're gonna shed your skin. You're gonna have to renovate, renew. You have a rebirth. Could be a reinvention of your career. It could be a new challenge that you want, a new project. And not everybody's gonna hang on or hang around. They become hooks. They'll keep you where you are. They don't want to allow you to go where you want to go because they're comfortable on that friend zone where everybody's in the same hut,
Yeah.
and so
I,
I
I
think I think you got to let go in order to let grow.
Yeah, I like that, and I told, I in fact, I've talked about this before. I'm not sure I've ever talked about it on the show, but I had a moment. I don't remember what it was. Maybe I came off of talking to somebody like this, and I just had one of those moments on the jujitsu mat with my students where I laid out this fact. There are people in your life that when your phone rings, you are like, "Hey," and you can't wait to pick it up and see what they want and talk to them. And when that phone rings, you have that emotional like, "Yes, I'm glad this person is calling." and you might hang up on another person to pick up that person's phone call. Then
Mhm.
you have the people that when they call, you look at the screen and you go, "Oh gosh, what do they want?" Oh, and you feel automatically a little bit of dread picking it up. And it can be a friend, it can be a boss, it can be an associate, it can be a somebody that you're dealing with something on. And I kind of told the students, try not to be that person for anyone, because if you are that person, maybe you're just somebody who calls all the time, and they work for you or you work for them, and they're just problem identifiers and not problem solvers. Maybe they're calling to complain about something, and you're having to field those kind of people. If that's what is in your life, every day is just nonstop people that when they're calling, you are reluctant to pick up the phone. You've got to change some things, and maybe it is that you need to leave that job. Maybe you need to get rid of that problem employee. Maybe that project that you've got to cut loose. I mean, whatever it is, you want to have your heart filled with joy when you see a person calling you.
Yeah, well, it brings to mind. I'm not sure if it was Jordan Peterson that had a lecture talking nice guys finish last.
Mm,
And when you really want to get somewhere, you have to say more no than yes.
yeah.
So you got to be. But one thing about everything that you're saying about not answering every single call, but like those who you truly believe had merit. But I lecture mostly in some of the passages of some videos that I watched of him.
Yeah, no,
The
I
one
have
that
a
is,
I have a friend who absolutely loves Alex
yeah.
Hormozy, and
So
I was only recently exposed to him, but yeah, he's
yeah.
great.
So, but one thing he said that is something that really you have to be mindful of. Whenever you have something going in your life well, you accomplish, you are successful in some endeavor, and within your close circle, your circle of close relationships, somebody actually reacts in a negative manner, like that he's not actually happy for you. And this, sometimes you have a friend that you consider a good friend or even a relative. You accomplish that, oh man, I got it. And that person has a very cold, almost like negative reaction, like that they are not happy. Or Moses said he get rid of that person faster than he
Yeah.
would somebody that he knows already is somebody against him. Because we cannot
Well,
tolerate is within the circle. And you can even have the analogy of a comedy like Robert De Niro and Ben Stiller on Meet the Fockers, where you have to be part of the inner circle, the circle of trust, what they call. And I know it was a comedy. I don't watch those actors anymore. I don't care about them. But uh, one of the things that I feel we make mistakes is if you have good nature, good willing, you're a good person, you're always open to receive anybody. And sometimes you're quick to trust people
mhm,
without having checkpoints. It's almost like if I'm going to meet a woman, I'm not married. How can I just embark in a serious relationship with that person if I don't have some checkpoints? Get to know that person a little bit, see what's going on. So, how was your life? And a lot of times you got to do the due diligence before you bring somebody in. Try to access a very successful person. You're going to have a lot of gatekeepers right there that's
yeah.
going to say, hold on, what's up? What's up with you? Who are you? What do you want with that fellow right there? And so they already have a structure that puts that in place. But we, on our day to day, if you're not like a corporate leader in a big company, we sometimes get caught by surprise. If you allow somebody who doesn't belong to your circle to have access to us too soon, too quick.
Yeah, well, what Alex, was describing there, oftentimes what is happening with that person is that spirit of envy or jealousy. And,
Yes.
and there's almost nothing more destructive than that in a friend group. Because if somebody's not happy for you, and, not your friend when you're going up, or there's somebody who celebrates secretly when you're going down, that is based in that envy. And by the way, the majority of the left leaning philosophy is animated by envy. That's a lot of what you're seeing with the left wing idea of the rich need to pay their fair share and all those sort of things. They ignore all the facts, they ignore all the data, and certainly there's things wrong with our society in some of the structures, but they're ignoring so many things in favor of just wanting to take someone down because they consider life is not fair to them, and that person has so much more. And that's what can absolutely destroy friend circles.
I think there is the bad jealousy and the good jealousy. And for me, I like the good jealousy. Man, I want to
Sure.
be like that guy.
Yeah.
I want to
Well,
be
that's
like
well,
that.
that's an admiration. I'm
Yeah.
happy for them,
So,
and
yeah,
darn it, I want that too.
yeah,
But it's not the tear down form of it. They
yeah.
must have stepped on people's
Well,
heads.
being resentful because that person's successful. Oh, that motherfucker. Why? Excuse my French. Why does he got that and I didn't? You
Yeah.
know. That's. I mean, that's exposure of your own state of mind. You're
Yep.
self-defeating. Because I feel not everybody's going to achieve the same. That's impossible. I think the ones that go higher and above or beyond what we have done, they're torch bearers. They
Mhm.
just give you a blueprint. I remember not James O'Keefe from the media, but there was another James O'Keefe was uh, somebody who did internet e-commerce,
Mhm.
and this particular fellow, he has a very interesting approach. He was the first guy that developed the simple gimmick. If I sell you one bottle for one price, and if you buy three, the same bottle for a discount, or if you buy 10, you know how he would kind of give you bundle opportunities to save money? That was the thing that he came up with. They would sell weight loss products like water online and became very successful with that. But what he was saying, he was talking about a method that he implemented called time collapsing. Everything that you want to accomplish, there's a degree of time. You have to build, you have to project, you have to manifest, you have to fulfill. So you have all those different stages that go from your head to the paper to plan of action and eventually get the results. And he said, let me see whoever industry somebody's doing what. And then he picked those and start to emulate. I want to see what website this guy does, what marketing person this guy uses, what kind of products, sources this guy goes to. And he literally would emulate every step of the way the best way he could. And he was able to break down the amount of time it took him to actually get the results. So if you don't do anything else but try to emulate in an honest way other people's successes, they can give you all the blueprint. And whether you're going to replicate to the same level, I believe you're going to replicate to a better level than whatever it is you are at the moment.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. I think that's
You
beautiful.
know?
Hey, so,
Yeah.
I would love to shift gears if you're okay with
Okay,
that,
please
and
do.
yeah,
Yeah.
and ask you because there's a lot of things going on in the world right now, and of course, you're still tapped into, your family in Brazil, and you're still plugged into some of the things that are happening there. I would love to get any inside thoughts on the latest because we've talked about this before, you and I talk about it a lot. We're in a global battle,
Mhm.
and it's a good versus evil battle, and anybody can be fascist on both sides of the spectrum. It's falsely attributed only to the far right, but fascism or authoritarian governments exist in pseudo communist, socialist, corporatist governments and all that. And Brazil has had its real troubles with authoritarian regimes and some of that same movement that we have had here. But there's a lot of people waking up. So, I'd love to get just your thoughts on, any recent news there. And then I want to hit you with a couple of news stories here before we
Sure.
wind down.
All right. So this is a civilizational moment. All right.
Yes.
What we're dealing here is with the United States trying to safeguard its position in the world because China has been investing and infiltrating in every possible area he can. And Brazil literally feeds China. You know, their agriculture, the agro industry, you know, feeds 1.5 billion people in the world. They're massive. All right. So you have the oil of Russia and you have the food of Brazil. Those keep China going. You know, in addition to the American market for them to sell their goods. So you take Brazil out of the equation, and it's not that the U.S. is trying to change Brazil or interfere with Brazilian politics. What's happening in the United States is creating shockwaves all over the world. This is good versus evil. We're trying to straighten things out. And I think that in Brazil and South America, the countries that are still affected by you call far left or very leaning left government, they have gone so far to one direction that they themselves are suffering a backlash out of their own doing it. All right. Now, Brazil, without the support of the United States, will not be able to get out of the situation it finds itself at the moment. The Brazilian president, Bolsonaro, has a son, Eduardo, who had to relinquish his position in Congress and literally had to self-exile himself here in America because he had the risk of being persecuted by lawfare over there. You know, as you know, it's a common practice. You see Le Pen in France. You see the Romanian former candidate. You know, this is a script that takes place in more places than one.
Yes.
But what happens? Eduardo is one of the main liaisons of the relationship between the U.S. and the Brazilian government, in particular, to see if they can protect the former President Bolsonaro from the lawfare he's being a victim of. And there's hope. Recently now I heard that his health is kind of like, you know, not that great because he had an incident when he first became president. He almost got killed,
Yeah.
stabbed during one of his outings prior to an election, and so he's in house arrest for the time being. You know, it's very rough, I guess, the situation. He was sentenced by the Supreme Court of Brazil, but now they're having loopholes, and Congress may hold and turn void that sentence. But there's a lot of pressure from the U.S. government that Brazil follows the right way to do things. There are sanctions going on right now to some of the people involved. Visas being revoked of a lot of people in the Brazilian government, and economic sanctions. You know, the tariffs are going from 25 to 50, sometimes 100%. And you know, and I think the U.S. is like, I would say 30 to 35% of Brazilian exports are to the United States. So, but more than that, the U.S. Economic system, you know, in the military, the GPS, if the U.S. turns off any of those, Brazil collapse in a heartbeat. You know, Brazil is walking on eggshells, excuse me, at the moment in regards to how they handle the situation, not the Brazilian people, but the current Brazilian government.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we have the Venezuela issue going on, which I think, you know, I don't think all the massive military on the coast of Venezuela is going to be parked around there without taking action at a point in time. I don't think Venezuela is going to be the only target. I know Paraguay and Ecuador already accepted the U.S. to build military bases over there. So it's already in far, I guess, stage at this point in time. They need a ground base to make sure that whatever they start can be sustained. And basically, I think a lot of the governments there, the problem is the narco has become a major player in how government operates in consortium with the governments. So it's a mess, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's beyond what the people can do on their own to handle it. You know, the Venezuela elections, Maduro was questionable. He never presented proof that he won. And so for all effects, I don't think U.S. recognized the results, and there's a lot unfolding there. But like you said, this is just, I think, a continuous evolution of something that eventually will culminate, and I do hope that it can be resolved in diplomatic ways. In some instances, I have my reservations how far this will have to go
Yeah.
before everything is handled.
Yeah, no, it's worrisome. I mean, and I've talked about this a lot. We are in a, global epic battle against good versus evil, and there's multiple players. There are, foreign countries, right? CCP, Russia, and those that want to, have their control. Everybody's trying to kill the U.S. to then pick apart its carcass, and we do have massive internal cancers that, praise God for Donald Trump and his election victory, because we do have a respite and we are seeing some, major change here, and we're seeing a revival here. Charlie Kirk and his memorial was evidence of that. And, we have as I've said, a generational problem that requires a generational solution, but it's us who want to have sovereignty in the biblical endorsed sense, where we as individuals serving our creator can have nations and can have people groups and aren't subject to the central planners that would like to globally be in charge of all of us and make decisions for us. And we are on the verge of kind of a world war for that, which is why you see so many fronts to that battle. And I do think, I mean, look, you're a Christian, I'm a Christian. We have, a big power ultimately in charge, and we know that we eventually have an assured victory. But there's some awful times that we can go through, and there are people in the world that are being persecuted for their faith, and there are, the rising tide of Islam. I know you're seeing that in Texas. We had a march at one of our parks here that surprised everyone, where we were having Islamists chanting, locally here in Idaho. I mean, it's you're having the call for prayer blazing over loudspeakers in Michigan. So the world is in an incredibly uneasy place, and I'm praying daily for God's victory at the local and community levels, because that's what's going to win it at the global level eventually.
Yeah. Well, I think, like, let's say you talk about the spiritual. All right. So we have many layers, and we can label religions. And I think that's a useful tool for the powers that be to use so they can pitch one against the other.
For sure.
Okay. And so I can coexist with any religion. I don't have a dispute. I think, though, in terms of culture, I think if you're an immigrant, you should integrate to the culture of the country you're moving to. You don't have
Correct.
to relinquish your original faith. But I think a lot of times the reason people come to a place like the United States is because here you have better opportunities in a country that offers much more than what you likely would have had if you remain in your home country. So I think it's a disservice to try to change into wherever you left, because the reason you left is you didn't have the opportunities there or the
Right.
support. And here you have. But in regards to, I guess you talk about faith and, I mean, the globalists or the powers that be that we don't see or hear about, those are the ones that they kind of orchestrate, in my opinion, the flashpoints. Okay, we're going to try to cause some stir up over here. All the deep state ingrained in all the
Yeah.
governments. Look at Europe, how it's hard to put everybody in alignment because they are so, in Germany, you see the censorship laws going on in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the UK. I mean, it's just like, there are people actually I heard that there was an artist that just arrived in the UK not long ago, and at the airport, he was questioned because part of the, I guess, protocol in customs there, they check your Facebook. And if you have anything you say that may sound against their narrative or whatever laws they have now in place, they will bar you from entering the country or may restrict your movement. So I'm like, man, is that crazy or what? I mean, but I think also I just saw that they might pass a law that in 30 countries in Europe, they're going to require American passport holders to have some sort of information that they have to provide. They have to have some sort of ID, digital ID. I don't know. You're talking about digital ID, which is another questionable thing. We saw that happen in Vietnam and India, and it was pretty bad
Yeah.
because those IDs were being hacked, and people that actually were recipients of welfare, they couldn't get paid. They couldn't access their bank accounts. It was a mess. It's a very scary, possibility if this becomes something that everybody adopts. From
Yeah.
my perspective, based upon
Agreed.
what I heard. But going back to faith, okay, I feel that we as Christians, we know that the battles won't be won without tribulations. And I think anytime we have the challenges, we have to be more focused on God. We have to
Amen.
be more diligent about our prayers, about our commitment to God. So we live according to His designs, and I feel like we can't relinquish to fear. I think
Amen.
the enemy feeds off fear. Literally, it's like a beast. I mean, the media. I mean, if you turn on the TV, all you see is divisiveness. They pound you with scenes going on all the time. They don't exploit the merit of anything. They just show you news bits to make you affected psychologically, so you can take a stance against somebody. You know,
Yes.
but we can't deny the reality. Which is challenging. But I do feel though there's way more good than bad. In my opinion, and good has prevailed, and I'm very optimistic that it will
Yeah.
prevail.
Yeah. Well, those who are good, and good needs to, wake up and rise to the occasion. And that means we do as Christians. And again, watching Charlie's memorial and participating in, all of that and seeing what's happening, with young men right now in the trending towards conservative traditional values. I mean, that is so encouraging and something that I'm seeing happen at such a rapid pace. All is not lost. Well, hey, as we wind this down, how can we follow you, sir? What, how would you like us to stay connected? Yeah, how can we
Yeah.
help?
Uh, there are three things you can do. You can go to my Instagram at Carlos Machado Jiu-Jitsu. You can also go to my Facebook page, my fan page, check it out. And check my podcast as well, which is called Coffee Time with Carlos Machado. So one of the three, I'll be more than happy to catch up with everybody.
Well, hey, thank you, Master Carlos, for coming on. I appreciate you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, to God be the glory, and we are out.
Amen.
Hey, thank you for watching or listening to this show. If you are someone who listens to us on the podcast apps, please go to our Rumble channel. Even if you're not going to watch us there, we'd appreciate you hitting subscribe. We want to boost those numbers up and make sure that channel continues to grow. But again, thank you so much for listening to us.